Good afternoon. My name is Alex from Swoosh English, and in today's class, I will be looking at some mock exam tips in relation to speaking, specifically speaking tips for pronunciation. So pronunciation is something which students often have issues with and often have questions about. They want to know how they can say words more accurately. They may have issues with particular sounds in English, particular phonemes, or there might be a more general issue in terms of the use of stress or intonation. Often the response is, well, you need to practice. It's not something which you can improve on in the space of a few hours or even a few days. It's something which requires constant practice. Now, this is still true. Nothing I'm going to say in this video is going to contradict that. However, what I'm going to do today is to try and identify some specific aspects of pronunciation which I've experienced students at Swoosh here have issues with sometimes, and I'm going to look at some ways in which we can actually do some practice in relation to those. So it's difficult to practice something if you don't know exactly what it is that you're getting wrong and you don't know exactly what the right way is in order to say something. So that is what I'm going to focus on today. Some pronunciation tips which are designed to improve your IELTS speaking scores. So that's what we're going to focus on. Please do get involved. If you're watching the class live today, there's a chat box where you can say hello and let me know that you're watching the class. That would be great to see. And also I will have a mini exercise at the end as well, which I encourage all of you to participate in. So let's have a look then at some tips in relation to pronunciation for the IELTS exam. And here we are. So, mock exam tips for speaking pronunciation. So in this lesson, we will focus on strategies related to pronunciation for the speaking section of the IELTS exam. So first of all, let's just do a quick overview in terms of the speaking exam. A lot of you will be familiar with it, but just very quickly, let's have a look at this together. So there are three sections. This involves question and answer for parts 1 and 3, and a long turn for part 2. Questions range from being personal questions in parts 1 and 2 to more abstract questions in part 3. The total length of the exam is between 11 to 14 minutes, and you will be graded with an overall band score at the end of the exam from between 1 to 9. 9 being the highest band score you can possibly achieve, native level proficiency, to 1, which will be the lowest. There are 4 grading criteria for the speaking: fluency, grammar, lexis, and pronunciation. So pronunciation makes up 25% of your grade for the IELTS speaking. So it's important that we get this correct. And that's why I'm having a look at some pronunciation tips in today's class. So the first tip I want to look at then is in relation to confusion over sounds, particular phonemes. And this is one which comes up a lot, I've noticed, with speakers, is that there is a confusion between the p and the b sounds when pronouncing words in English. This is something which can particularly affect speakers whose first language is Arabic, for example, distinguishing between the p and the b. So if you are from a Middle Eastern country, if Arabic is your first language, it's something that you will probably want to look at and practice to see if it's something which you could do with improving in terms of distinguishing between those sounds. So it may seem like the sounds are quite similar, p, b, but actually, producing those sounds incorrectly, producing a p when you want a b and a b when you want a p, can actually make words quite difficult to understand or can change the words quite a lot. So if we look at the first one and it says people, if we pronounce it using a b, we get beeble. Now, that sounds quite different to a native English speaker, and it is different, and I'm going to prove to you now the difference between the sounds. And you can do this yourself. So if you take just a thin sheet of paper, here I've just got some tissue, and you hold it close to your mouth. Okay, if you say the word with the b phoneme, the b, you'll see there's not much movement of the paper. So I could say, for example, beeble, beeble, beeble. And you can see the paper's in front of my mouth and it doesn't move. Beeble, beeble, or it moves very, very slightly. But if I use the P phoneme, what's the difference? People. Did you see how it blew completely back there? People versus Beeble. People. It blows it completely down. Now, the reason for that is because the P sound is made using an expulsion of breath from the mouth. P. As we close our lips, P, the air is expulsed from our mouths. So P has that effect, whereas B doesn't have the same effect. B is an effect which doesn't involve the same pushing of air from our mouths. So when we say these words, if we push the air from our mouths, then we've got a P. So in the word pear, if we hold it really close, pear, it blows it right down. But if I say bear, it doesn't. Bear. Okay, it hardly moves because the air is much less. There's much less air being pushed from our mouths. So that's just a bit of a physical demonstration that there's a real difference between these sounds, and it's important we get them right. You can do the same thing. You can practice. Hold a sheet of paper in front of your mouth as you're saying P versus B. If you're saying P correctly, then the sheet of paper should move dramatically. If you're saying B, then it shouldn't. There shouldn't be as much movement in the actual paper. So that's just something you can do to practice, a practical tip for those struggling between those phonemes. And a lot of people, especially as I said, those who have Arabic as a first language, do find it a bit difficult to distinguish between them. Okay, so having another look then at phonemes, another one which can be difficult to distinguish between is the B again and the V. So the B and the V. This is particularly difficult for Spanish speakers, for example, where there isn't a lot of distinguishing between those two sounds in their native language. So it's something, again, which needs to be practiced. Unfortunately, there is no paper test we can do this time to help us with the B and the V, but there is a test in terms of mouth shape. So when we're making the B sound, our lips come right together. So I'm going to put myself right to the screen so you can see that. B, B, B. You see the lips, B, they come right close together. However, if we're making the V sound, our lips don't touch. It's the teeth and the lips. V, V, V. That's why there's a difference between very, V, and berry, B. So you see the difference. The B, the lips are coming close together, B. But V, V, you've got your teeth coming to your bottom lip. The lips don't come together. So again, you can do this as you're practicing. Look in a mirror, watch the shape that your mouth is making. When you're making the B sound, you should see your lips come together. When you're making the V sound, then you should see that it's your teeth coming into contact with your bottom lip. Your lips shouldn't be pressed together when you're making that sound. So there are some great words you can use to practice that. So you've got the word here, vocabulary. So the V at the beginning and then cabulary. So it's a difference between the V and the B sound. It's a difference between words like boat and vote. So again, B and V. And also, it's not just at the beginning of words, but also in the middle of words. The difference between given and gibbon. Again, given, the teeth with the bottom lip, given, and gibbon, where you got the two lips coming together. So use a mirror to practice. These are really practical things you can do to help improve your pronunciation. If this is a mistake that you're making, if you're doing a mock speaking, for example, and you notice that's a mistake you're making, or you're doing a speaking practice with a partner, and this is something they can pick up on, then it's something that you can practice yourself. Use a mirror, have a look at the shape that your teeth and lips are making, and that will really give you a good guide as to whether you're pronouncing words correctly. Just as a follow-up here, there can also be an issue with the W and the V phonemes as well. This can affect speakers, particularly who speak languages such as Hindi, for example, or if you're from that part of Asia, there can sometimes be a difficulty there. So with W, there is no contact between the lips and the teeth. W. All you're doing is making your mouth into a circle. W, W, W. It's almost like making a vowel sound. W, W. Whereas with V, again, it's the teeth coming into contact with the lips. V, V. And that's the difference. So that's the difference between vest and west, okay, or vine and wine. Okay, so some clear differences there between those sounds, and the important thing is to keep practicing. Again, use a mirror. Are your teeth coming into contact with your bottom lip, v, or are you just making a circular shape, w, 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 and just literally w, w, just expulsing air, almost like a vowel sound, w. Okay, so something that we can practice. So there are a couple of other tips that I want to look at very quickly, which don't necessarily look at phonemes, as well as getting the pronunciation of the letters correctly. In order to score highly in pronunciation in IELTS, we also need to make sure that we're getting stress correct. Stress is really important because it can change the meaning of words in some cases, as well as if we get a word, if we stress it incorrectly, it can make it more difficult for the listener to understand what we're saying. So some examples here of words which are spelt very similarly, but are pronounced differently just because of the stress. So look at the first word. How do we stress the first word? Would we stress it on the first syllable or the second syllable? What do we think? If you're here in the chat and participating, this is a great opportunity to let me know what you think, to share your ideas. Okay, so looking at the first word, then the stress would actually be on the first syllable. Desert. That's a place in Egypt or in Africa, or in parts of the world where there's lots of sand. Desert. However, if we stress the second syllable, dessert, then suddenly we have something that you eat after you finished your dinner. Dessert, some kind of cake, some kind of sweet dessert. So the only difference between the two words is the stress. Desert, first syllable. Dessert, second syllable. So stress is really important. It can create different words and different meanings depending on the context. And there are a couple of other examples here. The verb record versus the noun record. Again, record, first syllable, the noun, record, second syllable verb. And it's the same with the other word. Permit is a noun, like a driving permit, driving license, permit, and permit is in the verb to allow someone to do something. Permit, second syllable. Final tip that I want to look at today in relation to pronunciation is another really important thing which can often be neglected, and that's intonation. So some speakers, when they're doing IELTS speaking practice, they don't vary their intonation very much. So we should use intonation to communicate attitude when we're speaking. It makes it so much easier for the listener to understand how we feel about a situation. We can use the intonation of our voice, like the musicality of our voice, when it goes high, when it goes low, and when it stays flat. The different musicalities of our voice we can use to communicate our attitudes and feelings. So questions here. How would you use intonation to show excitement or interest? Okay, we'd probably go high to show we're interested in something. And it was exciting. We go high. It's exciting. Show it's exciting. Your voice goes a bit higher. What intonation would you use to show disappointment or worry? You might say, for example, next week I've got an appointment. I'm worried about it. So you have a falling intonation to show that you're worried about something. I'm worried about it. And if you've got additional information, what intonation would you use for additional information? Last week I went to work. I went to work by car. Usually I go by bus. A slightly falling intonation, that extra information. Usually I go by bus. Okay, so you're showing that it's extra information. It has a slightly falling intonation to indicate that to the listener. So it's not just what you say, it's the way you say it. And that's 25% of your grade. Intonation is a part of pronunciation, obviously. So very quick summary then. In order to do really well in IELTS pronunciation, you need to identify your weaknesses and practice getting them right. Do you have any of the weaknesses that I talked about in this class so far? If you do, practice them. Use a mirror, use a little piece of paper, use these practical techniques to help you improve your pronunciation. Number 2, get the stress right. That just involves basically checking words, using online dictionaries, where should the stress be, reviewing if you have any uncertainties. And finally, vary your intonation. Use your intonation to show your attitude. So finally, then, there's a little exercise just to practice that final tip that we looked at today. What intonation patterns would you use for the following utterances? And also, you might want to think about which word you would stress. Don't worry too much about stress. I'll have a look at that in a future class. But yeah, think about how you might use intonation in these cases.
Thank you very much, Alexander. So, Laforans, make sure you practice using practice this exercise that Alexander has put on the screen for you. The more you practice, the more you're going to get out of these classes. And Alexander's given you some really good tips today on pronunciation, stress, intonation. So here you've got an exercise. Let's see who is going to have a go at that. We've got lots of people watching. I'm going to try the exercise. So we've got Mabel, we've got Jen Miel, Abby, Ivy, lots and lots of people here. But yeah, make sure you have a go at the exercise we've got on display right now. So let's see who's going to do it. How long are you going to give them, Alexander?
I'll just say another minute. It shouldn't take too long to work out what attitude wants to be expressed here.
Okay. So you got 1 minute, everyone. And for anyone who's watching this video later on after the Facebook Live has finished, you can also take part in the exercise and put your answers in the chat box.
Absolutely. So
also,
just...
sorry, Alexander, go on.
No, I was going to say, just bear in mind that all of these utterances here, these sentences, they're all linked together as well. So don't use them in isolation. They're all connected. Imagine that you're doing the long turn for part 2, for example, just to provide a bit of context for that.
Absolutely. And you can see where Alexander's talked about Iceland, Reykjavik, and Northern Lights. They're all associated together. Okay, and whilst we're waiting for people to do exercises, to take part in the exercise, remember that we have got this is the last day to sign up for our 100% IELTS Review Scholarship Program. So if you've not already completed the application form and you want to be part of this IELTS review, whereby you pay for the review program with us, and then once you pass your exam after having registered with Kinetics, who's our recruitment agency partner, and once you're in the USA, then you'll get your money back 100%. So this is our reimbursement program that we've got in the selected nurses tomorrow. We've had over 285 nurses who've already completed the application form. So it'll take you a few minutes to complete that, and then we will let you know tomorrow if you if you have been selected or not. So let's see if anyone has taken part in the exercise. I don't believe we've had any so far, Alex, but I'm sure once nurses watch the video later, they will take part.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, well, I would just give a bit of feedback on this then. I mean, obviously that first utterance, you can see it's showing excitement, isn't it? So we'd expect to have that rising intonation. So I went to Iceland last year and I had a great time. Yeah, something which shows the fact that we are excited. So a bit of variation. We wouldn't want anything flat. We wouldn't say, I went to Iceland last year and had a great time. No. I went to Iceland last year and had a great time. Okay. In the second case, I'm giving a bit of extra detail, aren't I? So I went to Reykjavik, which is the capital of the country. So there you've got your falling intonation, particularly for that second clause, which is the capital of the country. Okay, adding detail. And then for the final utterance, we can see here there's disappointment. So I didn't get to see the Northern Lights, which I was a bit disappointed about. So again, that falling intonation, just to show the fact that there's a bit of disappointment there. So the thing is with intonation, it can vary a bit from person to person, but I think the really important thing is that it should be varied. It shouldn't be flat all the way through, because if it is, then you're missing the opportunity to express the way that you feel about the sentences that you're using. Remember that pronunciation is basically, it's all about how you say things. Part of it is intelligibility, but also part of it is, are you communicating fully using pronunciation? And intonation is an important part of that.
Absolutely, Alexander. Thank you so much for today's class. And I know that all the nurses watching and the ones who are watching it later are going to benefit so much. So Alexander's going to be sticking around for any questions that you have. So if you do have questions, please put them in the chat box. I'm just going to adjust my camera here. Okay, just 1 second. So yeah, for anyone who, that's better. Okay, for anyone who has not joined our scholarship in terms of completing the application form and you want to be part of it, then you've got just for the rest of Thursday to complete the application form, and then we'll be selecting the chosen nurses tomorrow, and then we'll be announcing them by emails. It takes about 3 minutes or so, 5 minutes maximum to complete the application form. So once you've completed it, we will then let you know if you've been successful or not. As part of this program, you'll get live classes, you'll get all of our video courses and exercises, you'll get support from our teachers, you'll get study partners, you'll get mock exam, practice mock exams, analysis videos, everything you could possibly need in order to pass your exam. Writing corrections classes as well to help you. So we'll be helping you with reading, writing, listening. So make sure you get the practice with us. We'll be giving you feedback on your speaking, reading, writing, listening as well, telling you how you can get the improvements that you need, especially in speaking when you need a band score 7, and then the other areas where you need a 6.5 overall. So go ahead, complete the application form. Thank you so much for all to all the Laforans who are watching right now, and I look forward to announcing the winners very, very soon. Literally tomorrow we're going to be announcing them. So thank you very much. Hopefully you found this class helpful to you today, to yourself. Please put your friend or colleague in, tag them in this video, just put their name in there underneath. These are free classes that we do for Laforans, and we want you to benefit from them as much as possible. Thank you very much, and I hope you learned a lot from this class today on intonation, stress, and pronunciation, which are really important factors in getting a band score 7 in IELTS speaking, which you need to become a nurse in the USA to help you achieve your American dream. Thank you very much. This is Alex from Swoosh English. Have a great rest of the day and keep studying hard, Laforans. Thank you so much.